Good evening. Welcome to this week's episode of the Brothers and Sisters Podcast. It is Thursday, April 15th, 2021, and I'm back in Baltimore after vacation. I think a lot of us have gone away on vacation. It's been about 3 weeks since we've podcasted. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Solid. Tonight's guest, as I was saying kind of earlier, recording. This will probably be our most focused broadcast. Obviously, you guys know we normally go through topics du jour and have our guests comment on them, and then we kind of interview them at the end. But not only because this topic is kind of sort of, dominant in headlines, at least as far as finance and industry are concerned, but as I was talking to tonight's guest, who is, of course, Professor Del Wright, my cousin and current law professor, University of Missouri, Kansas City School of Law. Business cross, like not age, race, like class, it's cross. Everybody's talking crypto, Bitcoin, NFT. So I figured we were actually scheduled to do this a couple of weeks ago, but spring break got in the way, and now we're all back from vacation, we're ready to go. So we were actually debating how we're gonna do this. I figure, Chip, do you wanna talk? I figure it's best you talk about you. I hate talking about other people. People talk about them. You know you better than me. Like, you wanna kind of go into your background and talk about the book and then get into it, and then we'll really get into this.
All right, I can do 5 quick minutes or 3 quick minutes on my background since you're gonna ignore my bio. So
I'm not gonna ignore. I didn't ignore your bio. You know what? Let me not ignore your bio.
No.
Okay. He went to the inferior Loyola School in Maryland, inferior to Gilman Country Day School for boys. Then Chip he was a College Park guy. We like College Park here in Maryland. University of Chicago School of Law, public policy, master's in public policy from Kennedy up at Harvard. Practiced all sorts of law. Practiced was in all sorts of big finance and banking. Like, that's how I would have done your bio, but that's probably not how you want to do it, though. That's why I'm saying you should get into it.
Okay. I mean, you covered the basics. So let me share my screen right quick.
Do what you got to do, man.
Okay. Where is it? There we go. All right. So that's me, Professor Wright. As Quasi has been calling me Chip because I grew up as Chip, but when I needed to find a job, I couldn't put Chip on a resume because I'm not white and blonde. So I went with Del.
You're not that. You're definitely not that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Twitter is Crypto Law Prof. I got in early, got that name. Glad I got it. It helps kind of let people know who I am. All right, so this is the thing I've done most recently is I wrote a book, and it's a book mostly for law students, entrepreneurs, policymakers, and it's called The Short and Happy Guide to Bitcoin, Blockchain, and Crypto. And you can find it on Amazon. It's a real book. It's not like I'm selling them out of my trunk. It's actually a real book. It's got reviews. You can get it. And it's by West Academic, and West Academic is the major legal publisher out there, right? And the book basically has 3 parts. The first part explains the technology of Bitcoin and crypto. Part 2 explains the value proposition. Why is this stuff valuable? Why do people make such a big deal out of this? And part 3 gets into the law. Like, why are governments involved? Why do they care? Why is the SEC always raising an issue with some kind of crypto? And lastly, what are the tax rules? Like, I heard a lot of people say, hey, I got these gains in crypto. Do I have to pay tax on it? And the answer is yes, you do, generally speaking. As soon as you sell it, change it from one form to another, you generally have to report that. And if you have gains, it's taxable, right? So, that's the book I'm working on another book now called Bitcoin and Crypto in a Nutshell, which is, again, more for lawyers, but it will explain all the rules about Bitcoin and crypto.
And possibly a textbook?
Yes, and possibly a textbook. It interferes with my summer golf plans to write this textbook, but I think I'm gonna have to do it. Right.
Yeah.
So, those are the places I've worked. UMKC. I was a trial attorney at DOJ. Basically, I only prosecuted white collar tax criminals, meaning for the most part, rich people. And there is no greater joy than locking up a rich person for stealing from poor people. And oh boy, did I like that job. And it was fun. Like, truly enjoyed it. Bank of America and Skadden, basically what I did is put together really, really complicated tax deals for rich people so that they could legally, keyword, legally reduce their taxes.
So you kind of went from one side to the other, huh?
See, the legal side is the difference. The people who I prosecuted were doing it illegally.
I see.
Right?
I see.
There's a difference. Right?
I see.
Okay, and here's the education stuff: Harvard, Chicago, Maryland. As you see in the bottom corner, Maryland's on top for me. Like, I'm a Terp first, last. I'm a Terp. They got me started. They figured out that, I actually had something to offer. So I give Maryland mad props. And here's the other stuff, right? Working on my Spanish because I really want to move to Panama to not have to deal with the U.S. in a few years.
Yeah.
I run a summer China program. So I go to China pretty much about 5 to 6 weeks a year, working on my Chinese. It's passable. It's not good, but it's passable. The shopping in China is the bomb. The bomb. Like every time I go to China, I go with an empty suitcase, and people.
How long do you generally stay when you go?
5 weeks.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can't just go to China for like a week, right? And like come back. You probably have to stay longer than that.
Yeah, usually in the summer I go for about 5 weeks, and then I get invited to a conference every year, and so I generally extend that out for a week. But I usually go to Beijing, but the conference is it's close to Shanghai. So I get to see different parts of China. I'm a referee. I'm trying to do college women's basketball this year. I got to go to camp, but I got to lose about 10 pounds and start running again. And I'm finding that getting in shape is interfering with my golf. And
that seems to be a priority.
The golf thing is kind of becoming a priority. Referee and Barcelona fan. So that's who I am. That's kind of what I do. And then I will give it back to Quasi. So there you go. That's who I am.
So that was great. So let's get into it. I think Sean actually had a question. What is NFT? Can you answer that without starting at blockchain and crypto? Or
I can. And all in NFT, and it's if you think about it, it's kind of simple. It stands for non-fungible token, which means that it's a token, which is something that's recorded on the blockchain, that it's a digital asset that you own.
What's a blockchain?
The blockchain is basically a series of records that builds on top of one another, right? So if the best way to describe it is, if on day 0, you had 10 Bitcoins, and there were only 10 Bitcoins in total existence, you'd be able to track everybody who has one part of that 10 Bitcoins by looking back at every transaction on the blockchain. So if you traded you gave 2 Bitcoins to Walter, and then Walter gave 2 to Lindsay, and then you gave 2 more to Autumn, and then you gave 3 to Sean, and then everybody traded. You'd be able to go back from today to that 0 time when you had 10 and track everything. And nobody could mess with it, meaning it's uncorruptible. And that's really the key. It's basically an uncorruptible way to prove you own something. And we never really had that. Like, if you think about all the intermediaries who are involved in anything you own, like, who owns your money? Well, I own it. Yeah, where is it? Oh, it's in the bank. So do you really own it? There's no circumstance where they can take it from you? Well, yeah, there are kind of circumstances. So then who really, really owns it? Yeah, I guess they kind of own it and we share it, right? Any other thing that you have, you generally need some intermediary to prove you own it. The blockchain is saying no. If you have the magic numbers, which are called a public key and a private key, if you have the magic numbers, you can prove you own it, full, done, stop. That means if you have $1 million and you're like, you know what? I want to move to Panama. I can move to Panama and I don't have to declare to anyone that I have $1 million. No one knows I have $1 million because I can put it on a little device, and I always keep this one handy. I can put all my wealth, every last dime of it, on this device, walk across any border, and get all my assets once I get there.
That's remarkable.
Right? And that's part of the attraction, because that blockchain says, as long as I have the magic numbers, I can use this device and get my wealth right back out for anybody. And think about what this means in the third world, especially in countries that tend to not respect the rights of women. Like these women who are doing things, they might have a small business or something, and the men take their money from them, right? And they're like, I want to flee this jurisdiction. Well, before they couldn't take their wealth with them. Like, what are they going to do? How are they going to take their wealth with them? Now, as long as they can hold a device like that or a cell phone, they can take their wealth with them. And you don't even need the cell phone.
So I think you're hitting on a lot of, I think when this first hit everybody, or at least the public's mainstream, was with Silk Road and the dark web and how, those people exchanged, value, the goods and services they were dabbling in. If anybody, for people who don't know, Silk Road is the dark internet, the dark web, if you will, where people were doing illegal things for money. That the money that they used was cryptocurrency. That's where a lot of people, and then if people were paying attention, there were earlier deals, 50 Cent, David Wright. People were, instead of signing conventional contracts, this would have been 2007, 2006. They were getting Bitcoin. You explained what NFT was, you explained what blockchain was, and you used in talking about blockchain, you used Bitcoins as your currency example. What is a Bitcoin?
Okay. Bitcoin was the first successful rollout of a blockchain, right? The first, the granddaddy blockchain is Bitcoin, right? It is the first one. It was the first time they figured out how to do it right. And you had the ability to do it right requires solving a lot of very complex computer science problems, right? And someone or a group of people named Satoshi Nakamoto, no one knows who this person is or if it's a group of people, but someone named Satoshi Nakamoto wrote a white paper or a research paper that said, this is how you do it. And they pulled it off. And that was the growth of the Bitcoin blockchain. And that happened, I think, in 2009, right?
Yeah.
And so what happened after that was Bitcoin does certain things very well, but it doesn't do other things as well. Like it doesn't scale. It doesn't let you program as much information into a block or a transaction as some other things. So other blockchains arose to do things that Bitcoin didn't do particularly well, right? And that's where Ethereum came up. Like Ethereum wants to be what is called you can think of it as they want to be the Windows of the blockchain, meaning they're the operating system that everybody builds on to do stuff, right? And just like, well, some people don't believe in Windows, they use Apple. Well, or they use Android iOS. Well, that's where you
Android.
have things like
Android.
Cardano and Polkadot and some of these other apps. They're all trying to do something slightly different. And right now, there's enough space for all of them to coexist. There is no killer app operating system for smart contracts, which is, if you think about it, smart contracts are why Ethereum is out there, why Cardano is out there, why Polkadot is out there, why EOS is out there, why Tron is out there. They all are trying to be kind of the operating system for smart contracts, which raises the question, what is this smart contract thing you keep saying?
You know, that's where I was going.
Right, right. A smart contract is basically a way to program money, right? And if you think about the simplest example of a smart contract, not in the blockchain space, is a vending machine, right? You put in money, certain conditions are met, it spits something out, right? Smart contracts do the same thing. If you say, I want to buy a Dallas Mavericks ticket, and it is in a smart contract, that contract will say, if you pay this money, I will unlock this code that will allow you to get access to this seat. And then if I sell it, Mark Cuban gets a cut.
I see.
Right? It's programmable money, right? And you can think of all the things you can program into this. Like, oh, wait a minute. Hey, if I want to sell an NFT, how do I make sure the artist keeps getting paid every time it's resold? Make it programmable.
Program it into the
smart contract into your NFT. You see what I did there? I went to the next thing you want to talk about is what is an NFT?
Yeah.
Okay. Right?
It's almost like you teach for a living.
Yeah. Who knew? Right. So what a non-fungible token is it's a very unique piece of digital asset, meaning there is only one of a kind of this thing, and it's provably unique. And if you think about it, think of it as the difference between a Basquiat painting and $1, right? All of us probably have $1, but all of those dollars can be exchanged for another dollar, and nobody cares what dollar you have, but they are all unique. They all have a different serial number on them, right? But no one cares because $1 is pretty much as good as any other dollar. And for the most part, this is not technically 100% true, but any Bitcoin is exchangeable for any other Bitcoin, right? It doesn't matter. It's starting to matter, but that's another, as Oprah would say, that's another talk show. It's starting to matter which Bitcoin you get, but for the most part, it doesn't matter. Like if you have enough Bitcoin, you can buy something, period, full stop. It doesn't matter what Bitcoin you have. But a non-fungible token means this thing is unique. This token represents a Basquiat painting. It's the digital representation of this Basquiat painting. And there are only 3 of them. And you can prove that these are the only 3 ever made, right? And they have, in effect, something you probably are familiar with, metadata. There is metadata in the NFT that proves it is unique, right? And all these NFTs get issued on blockchains, right? And it raises one of the issues that a lot of people haven't thought about. If you issue an NFT on Ethereum, okay, what happens if Ethereum goes away? What do you own now? You own some digital asset on a blockchain that is gone? Because not everybody's issuing these NFTs on Ethereum because it's expensive to issue on Ethereum. Yeah. Right. Some are there's a I think it's rareable and mintable.
What's Ethereum as opposed to a blockchain? What's the difference?
Ethereum is its own blockchain, but the Ethereum blockchain is basically a smart contract platform. Right? It's a way to run smart contracts, but the ability to get stuff done on Ethereum to execute smart contracts, you use the coin for the Ethereum blockchain, which is Ether, right? And it's called ETH. right? And you say, well, to mint an NFT, you have to burn $500 of gas fees. And what they're talking about is $500 worth of Ethereum to be able to execute that smart contract on the blockchain, right? Because what you're doing is there was a state of the world here, and you want to make a new state of the world, which means you have to record information on the blockchain. So you're adding that new block. Well, somebody's got to do work to add that.
Yeah, you have to pay to do that. Okay.
Right? And that's what you're doing, because again, it's called a blockchain for a reason. Every time you add something to it, you're adding a new block, and somebody has to do the work to add those blocks, and they get paid to do that, right? In Bitcoin, to add a new block, you have to solve a very complicated math problem. Right? It's called the proof of work system, right? And right now, I think it's 6.25 Bitcoins to add a new block. So whatever computer scientist or what computer group adds the next block, they get 6.25 Bitcoins. So,
and what are Bitcoins valued at right now?
Somewhere around $62,000, right? As we speak.
A piece?
When I wrote the book, they were worth 10,000.
Yeah.
When
I invested in Robinhood, they were at 11,000. Then I saw they were at 33,000.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and quite frankly, one thing I didn't talk about in my background is, like, how did I get into crypto? One of my students came to my class. He's like, Professor Wright, what you know about Bitcoin? And I said, nothing. And then I was like, wait a minute. They pay me to have answers. And I started digging. And I was like, and I haven't stopped yet.
Yeah.
Right? I have not stopped. I was like, and it's made me a little bit of money. So I'm like, that student can never ask me for anything. Whatever it is, I am happy to give that student. Well, he's no longer a student. He's a criminal defense lawyer. But anytime he ever needs anything, I'm always answering his phone. Because he's basically paid for my child's education.
Here's a question for you. So there's fractional shares on the typical stock market. How is there a fractional Bitcoin if it requires X amount of Bitcoin to add a block to the blockchain?
Okay.
How do they sell fractional Bitcoin?
Okay, it doesn't require Bitcoins to add a block. You get paid if you do the work and to add a block. So that's one part of an answer to your question. As far as fractional Bitcoins, every Bitcoin is broken down to 100 million little pieces, and each little piece of a Bitcoin is called a Satoshi, right? And so 100 million Satoshis equal one Bitcoin, right? And so as long as you're not dealing with a size smaller than 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin, there's no need to fractionalize it, right? You can think of it like pennies, like, each, you can't really have, you could theoretically have half a penny, but there's no representation.
No value, right? So I guess the next step of my question would then be, if there's a finite number of Bitcoin, how can there be fractional parts of Bitcoin? Because that was the attractiveness of it, right? Is that it's a finite number. So how do we have fractional parts of a finite number if someone owns all of the parts?
But see, no one owns all of them yet. Right now, and that's a great question, because it allows me to kind of explain one of the truly big benefits of Bitcoin. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins minted. Okay. Period, full stop. There will only ever be 21 million. But if you take that 21 million and you multiply it by the 100 million Satoshis, that's a lot of Satoshis out there. Right? So that'd be what, 2.1 trillion, I think.
Trillion.
Right? So no, actually, it might even be bigger than that. But the bottom line is, as of today, almost 19 million of those Bitcoins have already been minted.
Right.
So there are only about 2 million left that will be minted. And when I say minted, that's where those people are doing the work to add another block to the blockchain. When they add that block to the blockchain, they get paid 6.25 Bitcoin. And that happens roughly every 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes, a new block is added to the blockchain. Whoever adds that block gets 6.25 Bitcoin. And eventually, over time, that's how you get to 21 million, right? And every 4 years, they have the number of new Bitcoins for adding a block. And the last halvening was in May, right? And so, and there's a really good model out there for anybody who's like, you know, wants to jump into the numbers, but it's a model out there by somebody named Plan B. And Plan B's model looks at the price of Bitcoin after the halvenings. And they're called halvenings. Every time the amount of Bitcoin you get when you add a block goes down by half. Like, you know, before May, it was what, 6.25, so 13 or something like that. I think it's probably 6 1/8, right? But it was, at some point it was 100, then it was 50, then it was 25, then it was 12.5, then it's 6.25. Right?
And it decreases as more people begin to solve the math problem and add to the.
No, it decreases every 4 years.
But that's what I'm saying. Why? Is that just because more people are adding to it, or?
It's the way it was designed. It basically is designed so that all the Bitcoins will be minted, I think, by 2035, or pretty much all the Bitcoins will be minted by 2035. And basically, it's an exponential system so that more Bitcoins got released early, like in, you know, 2010, 2011, 2012.
I understand.
And then it keeps going down and down and down.
It get more rare, force the value higher.
Right. If you think about it, it's a very ingenious way to create scarcity, right? Yeah. And if you think about why anything is valuable, it's valuable generally because it's scarce. And that's why, as an economic system, it's sublime in how well it works, right? I mean, it really just delivers in everything it's supposed to do. And that's why, you know, at this point, Bitcoin has kind of made a decision. And when I say Bitcoin has made a decision, like, well, how can Bitcoin decide? It's not real. But the people who maintain the system, who are called the core developers, they've kind of said, we're not really messing with our system too much. We don't need to be the smart contract platform. We don't need to do all that other stuff. We are digital gold. And if you think about it, that's their model. Digital gold. We are a scarce asset that increases in value because of scarcity. And they're like, yeah, they could do things to make Bitcoin faster. And, you know, right now it takes 10 minutes to add a block. They can make it 5 minutes. They can make it 2 minutes. They can do all kinds of things. But for what? It's working. Have you ever seen a Bitcoin ad? There's no marketing agency for Bitcoin.
No.
They've created, what, $1 trillion of value in 10 years. So why mess with it?
It really is just from word of mouth.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, $1 trillion of value in 10 years. And it's still, of all the cryptos out there, Bitcoin has roughly a 55% market dominance, right? And so if you add every other crypto together, they're about equal to what Bitcoin is.
I have 2 questions and then I'll be done. Now I'm going to turn it over to everybody else. Well, actually, one is a request and the other one is a question. They're both questions, but kind of sort of. One, can you talk about Dogecoin? And then after that, can you talk about Coinbase, the IPO that was released this week?
Sure.
That debuted this week.
Sure. I'll talk about Dogecoin. And Dogecoin was created pretty much as a joke. They were like, hey, let's just create a blockchain that doesn't really do anything, but it's a fully functioning blockchain. But we just do it. It's kind of like, yeah, let's just do it, right? And it kind of took off and people were like, yeah, right? but there is no true use case for Dogecoin other than kind of goofing off. However, if you think of something that is, I kind of view it as like, if you're on a desert island like Walter, and you see a hammer, eventually you will figure out something to do with the hammer because it's a fully functioning tool, right? And so what's happened is people get in and out of Doge, not because of what it does, but they think that at some point it could have some use, right? So, you know, a lot of times my friends will say, do you own any Doge? And I'm like, no, because it doesn't do anything yet. And there's so many cryptos out there that do stuff and are returning based on what they do. Why would I just throw money at something that is kind of a speculative bet? Now, granted, I'm not saying it's not a good speculative bet. I'm saying there are too many fairly sure things out there for me to throw money at something that's a bet, right? The consensus estimate is a 6-figure Bitcoin this year. Like, it's at 60 grand. I'm like, if everybody is saying 100 grand of Bitcoin this year, why would I take any money and put it in Doge when I don't really know why it's going up, right? And so, you know, this is kind of like, you know, some of my friends will say, you're a very conservative investor. I'm like, no, I'm not conservative, but I'm not putting money behind something I don't believe in. Like, I got to see the picture before I throw money at it. Like, and I just don't see a picture for Doge. I'm like, yeah, it could happen. It could, you know, it could go from 13 cents today to $1.30 tomorrow. Yeah, it could, but I wouldn't know why. And if I can't explain it, I'm not putting no money. So that's my view on Doge, right? I just don't see the long-term value play in Doge. You know, there's so many other things. Like, you know, I think I was telling Walter earlier, there's a coin called Rune Coin that's up 4 million%. Think about that. It's up 4 million%, right? And if you were paying attention, you could have said, yeah, if they can pull off their strategy, I could see that working. Now, no one obviously saw 4 million% working, but you kind of knew what their strategy was, and they pulled it off enough so they got a 4 million% return, right? The Flow blockchain, where NBA Top Shot, they're up somewhere around 100 to 1 from when they issued. Now, the thing about it is, we can't buy the Flow token in the US because they don't issue that token to US holders because they're afraid of the SEC. But it's one of those, like, again, you know, people say, if I'm going to roll the dice, like you just said you went to Vegas, if I'm rolling the dice, I'm not rolling it with Doge, right? I'm rolling with somebody that, you know, I see, I can see the upside.
When you say a Bitcoin that does something, explain what you mean when you say it does something.
Right. So Bitcoin has captured the narrative of it is the store of value asset.
Okay.
Right. That's what it is. Ethereum is, we are the back office. We are the operating system for smart contracts. There's a company called Chainlink. And what Chainlink does, and, you know, it's another company I invest in, Chainlink is the Oracle company for smart contracts. And, you know, this is kind of a good way to talk about, well, what is an Oracle? Whenever you have a smart contract, like, you know, the example I used in my book is, let's say Quasi and I want to bet on the NCAA basketball tournament. I'm taking Maryland, he's taking Duke, right? We could either go to Vegas and one of us is going to pay a bookie 10%, the VIG on the deal, or we could enter into a smart contract. He could put up $100, I put up $100. We both put it in a smart contract. Once the game is over, the smart contract will pay all the money inside the smart contract to whoever won. I took Maryland, so I win. I get the $200, right? Smart contracts do that. But then you have to say, well, how does a smart contract know who won the game, right? that's where an oracle comes in. There are companies out there, I'm going to use the word companies for now, but there are entities out there or companies out there who create programs to go get real world data and put it into smart contracts so that those smart contracts can be trusted. And Chainlink is the best of its class. It is the top smart contract oracle company. And what they do is provide real world data to smart contracts. And so now Quasi and I can enter into that smart contract and we cut out the middleman. We cut out Vegas, right? And it's a more efficient market, right? Both of us are better off in the sense that I now get all $200 instead of getting $190 because we don't have to pay the bookie the VIG. And if you have a decentralized marketplace of bettors, then everybody gets the bet they want, right? Instead of the bet that, if you ever look at the lines, the line numbers never are equal. It's like plus 135, minus 115. That difference is the VIG, right? And smart contracts can take that away. And that's just one area. It's the cleanest area, but there's so many other places where smart contracts will come and do that, right? And so when I say Doge doesn't do anything, it's not a store of value coin like Bitcoin. It's not really functional for smart contracts like Ethereum or Cardano or, any of those others. It's not an oracle company like Chainlink. It's just kind of a coin that you can kind of do stuff with. And you can use it to make payments. But, any money, any good money is a store of value, a medium of exchange, and a unit of account. And if the price keeps moving up, it's not a very good store of value. Or if it moves, right? And so again, Doge just doesn't do very much. It's just kind of there. And it's like, yeah, at some point, somebody will probably figure something out to use Dogecoin for. Like Mark Cuban, I don't know how many of you know this, Mark Cuban will allow you to pay for Mavericks tickets paying with Doge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you think about Mark Cuban and the nature of kind of who he is, well, if you made a big investment in Doge and you say, I'm going to allow you to pay for your tickets in Doge, more
valuable. Yeah.
Now, Mark Cuban has made more money. Right?
Yeah.
One of the things I always tell my students is always figure out how the other person making their money. Right?
I got just a process question.
Sure.
Just for dummies. Like, say I'm a woman in the country, like you were talking about, and I'm selling purses on the street or whatever. I got a box full of cash. Is there a crypto man? How do I start this process? You know what I mean? Is there a dude I call up? Like, I got cash. You trade this for yada yada, or do I go to the bank first and then transfer that money? How does the process work?
It depends on where you are, but generally speaking, there is someone who will take your cash and give you crypto, right? And there's a special kind of crypto called a stable coin. And what a stable coin is, it's structured to always be worth $1, right? And I'm just talking about US stable coins now because obviously we're in the US. But that stable coin is always worth $1. So if I wanted to convert my cash into crypto, but I didn't want to have any volatility about how much it's worth, I could go and say, hey, I have $100, give me $100 worth of stablecoin.
I'm sorry, that is incredible. There's like a crypto money market?
Not only is there a crypto money market, but they will pay you roughly 10 to 12% on your stablecoins, which means if you have $100 of cash and you turn it into stablecoin, instead of it sitting in the bank at 0.3%, you can earn 8 to 12% simply by holding it in stablecoin. And these stablecoins have been around long enough that you can actually believe that the price is going to be stable.
Yeah, central banks coming around, I know it has been big.
Right. And it's not, it's not perfectly stable, but I think you'd have to go back probably 5 years for it to have. I think at one point it got down to 97 cents and up to $1.03. But for the most part, it's stayed at $1. Like it moves a little bit, but it's stayed at $1. And again, a lot of really wealthy people are simply saying, I'm turning my cash into stablecoin to earn 8 to 12%.
Yeah, why not?
It's
So,
money, right? Especially if you could borrow it from the bank at 5%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. But with respect to that question, and this happens a lot, and I can tell you places it happens, particularly places with high inflation, right? If you're in Venezuela, like Venezuela has dealt with, 1,000,000% inflation at some point, where prices were basically doubling every 2 weeks or every week, right? And if you're in Venezuela and you just sold a house, right? You now have a pot of money. That money in 2 weeks will be worth half as much. So what you want to do is you want to take your pot of money on sale, convert it into crypto until you need to spend the money so that you don't get stuck losing half the value of your assets. The government hates this, right? Because it's the Venezuelan government who has made the reason why your value is going down in the first place, right? And so you have this system, and the Venezuelan, and I'm saying this because Venezuela is one of the countries that I've really looked at. They do everything in their power to stop you from doing this. But you have Venezuelan, they're called currency tourists. They will take all the cash they have, get on a flight to Colombia to convert it to crypto. And they make so much money that it pays for the flight to Colombia and back, right?
Just for doing it. Wow.
Just for doing it, right? I mean, the game is changing, right? And government, again, that's why you see a lot of governments who are like, we're anti-crypto. Nigeria is having issues with this. Because Nigeria has an issue about spending too much money it doesn't have and putting that on the backs of its citizens. Well, one way the citizens can get around that is say, I don't want your money. I'm going to take your garbage money and convert it into this. And people are like, government's like, oh, you don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. You're taking money away from me. You're like, yeah, like, well, whatever. I'm keeping my money dry. You go ahead, do what you do. And it's putting a lot of pressure on bad governments. And what this is going to mean over the next 10 years, who knows? But it's going to change a lot of governments because for the most part, most governments were stuck, or most citizens were stuck with bad governments. They couldn't really do anything about inflation. The government can't do this stuff if their currency, no one wants their currencies, right? And that's starting to happen, right?
Okay, so how would you go about finding a stablecoin man?
They're stable. Oh, they're all over the place. Think about it. If you've ever been in a foreign country, a less developed country than the U.S., you can always find somebody willing to sell the thing that you need to buy.
Yeah, currency exchange or I set US dollars. Yeah,
person's out there, and one of my buddies, a guy I went to grad school with, he just did a deal to be the crypto kind of facilitator for Guatemala, right? It's coming, right? All you need is a cell phone. Think about it. All you need is a cell phone and a good internet connection, and you straight.
Okay, so you give them your cash, and they give you a little device like you just showed us.
No, you can. One fun thing about China is they are way ahead of us in moving money. Like if you want to spend money in China, you take your phone, you scan a QR code, and you transfer your money. That's it. There's paper money. They really don't use paper money. Everybody uses WePay or Alipay, which is basically once they ring up your bill, there's a QR code that says you owe, 8 yuan. All right, you take your Alipay. Do you have 8 yuan in your Alipay account? You scan it, it moves the money, you're done. There's no credit cards, there's no swiping. It's simply that. You can do the same thing with crypto.
We just studied WePay. Sean and I are in a emerging media master's program. We're writing about to write an RFP. One of the articles I was looking at was just about WePay, and not only of its popularity as facilitator of exchange transfer, like money transfer. It's like a social media platform. Also, yeah. People talk about it like it's like the book was literally talking about how WePay is like it's like a social phenomenon, and the fact that for young people, and the fact that like moving money is like related to like talking with power, being more politically involved, and they're changing things. And so I was just thinking about what you were just talking about with Guatemala and Venezuela, and you just said WePay. I was like, I just read about that. Like, that's crazy.
Yep. And, you think about China, and, honestly, I have to be careful here because I go to China a lot, but it's a way for the government to kind of know what's going on, because that's a private blockchain. Like it's not even a blockchain, but it acts a lot like a blockchain. But the government can look at every time you spend your money. And you think about the privacy issues around, if the government knows every place you spend your money, is that the kind of thing you want the government to know? Well, every time you use a digital money in China, the government knows who it is who spent it and what you spend it on. If you are a young Chinese student who wants to go down to the protest at Tiananmen Square, and they see that you bought a train ticket to go to the protest and you got off the subway at that station, guess what? You might get a visit.
Yeah.
Right? And quietly, the US government is having the same kind of thought. Do they want you to be able to spend your money without leaving a digital trail? And right now, the answer is no, they don't. They don't want you to have that ability. Crypto says, good luck trying to figure this out. The government, we don't know how this is going to play out. The Biden administration, who knows where they're going to come out on this? But in general, most governments want to have that ability to observe their citizens. They say it's for money laundering and, tax evasion, and there are legitimate money laundering and tax evasion reasons. But there's also financial freedom and privacy. And, those are big, important things too. Who knows where this is going to play out, but I'm happier that it's Biden than Trump. Right?
We're at 50 minutes. I wanted to keep this at like 45 to an hour because I know we can talk about this forever, but we got about 10 minutes left, guys. So
I just have to do some more digging. I just feel like Marlon, like, so I just gave you my box of money. This little ass, this my money right here?
That's my question. Like, maybe because this is very abstract for me at this point until I, really learn more about it and kind of like ingrain it into my brain. Like, so let's say I have cryptocurrency. Is it possible that someone can digitally steal it? How do I get it back? Is this regulated? It just kind of seems like it's a Wild West thing right now, and that makes me a little uncomfortable with investing too much into it.
I would say if you would ask me this question about 2 years ago, it would be a slightly different answer. But there are now enough regulated entities who can hold your crypto for you that it's fairly you can never say risk-free, right? But 2 big points. One, neither Bitcoin nor Ethereum has ever been hacked. The hacks have been on the on-ramps and off-ramps, meaning, people put their thing in this thing that goes into Bitcoin, but Bitcoin itself, Ethereum itself have never been hacked. if you have a significant amount of money, like before, like I think I showed you this, you can keep it on this, but if you lose this, then you lost your money. There is one of the slides I have, it talks about, there's a guy who bought 2 pizzas from Papa John's for 10,000 Bitcoin back in 2010. Right?
What? Oh my gosh.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
10,000 Bitcoin. 2 pizzas, Papa John's pizzas too. Not even like,
Not even a local area.
Right? There are people who have lost hard disks with thousands of Bitcoin. So there's a certain self-sovereign aspect of crypto, meaning you can keep it on yourself. I don't tend to use that part, and it's called a hard wallet, right? A hard wallet means it's completely yours, but you also could lose it. Now there are some custody solutions that give you the protection, and basically, realistically, unless you're talking about 8 to 9 figures, they got you, because their reputational risk would be so great for not giving you your money back. And then you're talking about, like, you can put it with the Winklevoss twins, right? They are billionaires 8 times over. They're like, yeah, okay, your $100,000 is not really going to break us. So if somebody did hack you, we'll give you your $100,000 back, right? And so a lot of those kinds of things are in place. And so now Fidelity's getting in this. Like,
yeah.
Fidelity
I saw JP Morgan as a crypto desk, Bank of America as a crypto desk. Like,
when the banks are getting in, basically,
that's
like, we got to get ahead of this, because if we don't get ahead of it, they're going to leave us. Because quietly, if you have a good crypto account, you really don't need a bank.
I was 100% an Autumn type skeptic. As a matter of fact, Autumn, I think me and you have talked about this before, like in the past, about being skeptical because of it not having central bank backing. Like it wasn't backed by any central banks anywhere. What I've seen since that happened, and then I saw the banks get involved, and then I've seen particularly within this past year with the pandemic and Joe investor off the streets buying Bitcoin and Dogecoin and stories of, and like I said, my kids are coming up to me asking about it because they got friends who bought it on Robinhood, and now
got friends who are fucking scammers.
Right? So we got about 6 minutes left. I know you can't leave without giving us some recommendations of places to invest in. I'm trying to get all this, we do it for the listeners.
My local stablecoin man.
So you can buy stable coins, like Quasi was talking about Coinbase. Like Coinbase had their IPO. And one of my clients actually asked me, should I invest in the Coinbase IPO? And I'm like, why? I mean, as a practical matter, that's Charles Schwab for crypto. And I'm like, yeah, it's good. You might see a 20% return or 30% return over the year, but why would you put your money in that thing instead of putting your money in the thing that actually is growing 50, 60, 70%? Like, I'm sorry. And, but, one of the things, I'll answer your question. If people are interested, I think one of the best places to get started is Coinbase, right? Coinbase or Cash App, right? Because they're simple. They're easy. Like, I've gone on you can go on your phone. I used to do this pre-pandemic where I'd have lunch with somebody and they say, how hard is it to buy Bitcoin? And I pull up Cash App and I say, buy $5 worth of Bitcoin. And they're like, you mean you're done? I was like, yeah, I'm done. I just bought.
I've had Coinbase for some years now, still not totally sure what to do with it, but I put in
yeah.
I've $50 worth of Bitcoin and maybe something else. And I don't really look at it very often because I don't know, but I'm like, now I might have like $21.
Yeah.
I'm putting in the 15.
The benefit of Coinbase is they have probably the best UI as far as the ability to take your Bank of America, Citibank money and move it into something that allows you to buy crypto. That is what Coinbase does very, very well. They are easy, but they aren't the best in price as far as executing trades. They don't have the greatest selection of cryptos to buy, all that other stuff, but they are simple, right? And, you know, it's a great way to make baby steps. And I think Cash App might only, you can buy Bitcoin and maybe,
I don't buy Bitcoin on Cash App.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can buy Ethereum yet. Like,
I haven't checked it. I know you could buy Bitcoin a while ago. They may have added Ethereum. I haven't checked in a while.
And so, you know, I tell people first, just open an account. It doesn't cost anything. You can put some money in it. And again, you can buy your stable coins there. Like the biggest stable coins are Tether and USDC. And USDC is US dollar coin, basically. Tether is an international player, and they're the biggest one. But there are about 4 or 5 good stable coins out there. And all of them do pretty much what they're supposed to do. They are always worth $1. And one of the reasons you have stable coins is if you have crypto gains and you want to take them out of the gain, but don't convert it to fiat meaning regular dollar accounts, you can just move it to stable coin until you're ready to do it. And it's all
like crypto. A goddamn money market. It's unbelievable.
It's crypto to crypto. Now, with respect to investing, and I'll give you the caveat that everybody gives when saying something about investment. You have to do your own research. I will tell you what I do. I'm not telling you what you should do, right? What I do is what I call the apex predator strategy of investing, meaning I buy the best of the group. Whoever does what they do best is the companies that I buy, right? For me, that is Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, Polkadot, Chainlink. Like that's my big 5. You know, and for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Chainlink, I think I've already explained why. Polkadot and Cardano basically are trying to do things Ethereum doesn't do quite as well. And I think there is enough space for 3 big companies out there. But in 5 to 10 years, almost all the smart cars, smart buses, Airbnb locks, everything will be on a blockchain. And those blockchains have to be able to run efficiently. And that's where the Cardanos, the Polkadots, and the Ethereums are going to play out. And so for me, I take a big chunk and invest in what I call the apex predators. They are the best in class. And then I take the rest and, watch a bunch of YouTube videos to figure out what's the hot thing, right? And if you pay it, and this is one of those things, if you pay attention and you watch the videos and there are a few videos that, a few YouTube personalities who I watch pretty regularly. One is called BitBoy. He puts out content every day. If you watch BitBoy for a couple of weeks and you start to say, all right, I'm going to back test everything he said. I'm going to go 2 weeks back to see, does he know what the hell he's talking about? And I've done that and I'm like, yeah, he kind of gets it. He kind of gets it right. Right. And then I listen to the podcast. I only listen to really 3 podcasts. The Unchained podcast by Laura Shin. She's a former Fortune writer. The Bad Crypto podcast, because they're 2 guys who talk about a lot of what's going on in crypto. They've been doing a lot of NFT stuff lately. And I was on their podcast last year. And I'm trying to think of the 3rd one. What Bitcoin did.
You will be listening to Brothers and Sisters podcast. And now you got a 4th podcast.
Not about crypto yet.
Not about crypto yet, but we might have to have a crypto specialist, a crypto guru. We'll have to talk about that.
But honestly, it doesn't take a whole lot of time. After school's over in 2 more weeks, my plan is I'm going to take about 45 minutes to an hour a day and just watch the people who dig into this stuff more than I do to figure out what are the good investments. But 60 to 75% of everything I invest is still going to be in my big five.
Okay. On that note, Professor Wright, we cannot thank you enough for kind of sort of clarifying the entire world. And I know when it comes to crypto, I know you can go deeper, and I know we can go deeper. But like I said, for the sake of my editing bones, we have to cut it. We have to keep it at an hour. Can you plug yourself, plug your book, plug anything before you go?
The only thing I'll say is, if you're really interested, get the book. It's a short and happy guide to Bitcoin, blockchain, and crypto. It's available on Amazon. It's available at West. It's like West Academic Publishing, and you sign up. Signing up just means you give them your information. You get like $2. But it really does give you kind of a grounding and to say, all right, now I get it. And, you know, it's written from my, you know, somebody who read it said, you wrote this like you wrote, right? Like, yeah, I kind of did, right? And this is me. Like, I wrote it to this kind of audience, right? And again, the first two parts will give you kind of enough that you can say, all right, I get it. And, you know, I tell people this is the internet in 1995.
Wow. On that note, once again, Professor Wright, thank you for all of us, as brothers and sisters. Until next week, everybody. All right. I'm going to stop recording.